Yeah, right?
Matt, when does fall officially start?
Not until the 22nd of September, so we got a ways.
Yes, but there's something about the air right now, even though it's warm, and the lighting that kind of feels like fall.
It's the lighting. The lower sun angle just makes for really great lighting this time of year.
So nice. Thank you, Matt. And we have a preview of Friday Night Football coming up right after this.
All right, welcome back on this Friday, where some of you I know are already celebrating a late summer weekend. 65 degrees in Cannon Beach. It's actually warmer than it was. Laura was pointing out during the 5 o'clock. What time for sunset, though?
7:41, so it's going to be a nice sunset. Also a nice evening for football.
And let's get the music going, because week 2 of Friday Night Football is here. Orlando and our team of photographers are already out the door and on the road to bring you all the action. Let's run you through the big marquee games of week 2.
Starting with one of the top rivalries in the region, Central Catholic travels to Jesuit for the Holy War. The Crusaders looking for redemption after their week 1 shutout loss to Skyview. And in Eugene, it's a rematch of last year's 6A state championship as the Westland Lions visit the Irish of Sheldon High.
This music just gets me going. Plus our game of the week, the Clackamas Cavaliers take on the Sherwood Bowmen. Both teams looking to go 2-0 after big wins in week 1. And we, of course, will have all the highlights coming up tonight at 11. Shaken and bacon, as Orlando says, on week 2 of Friday Night Football.
Always look forward to that. Let's take another look at your 7-day forecast. Really worth that second look. Look how beautiful temperatures in the 80s for the weekend. Dip down into the 70s early next week. And then Matt says we could see a 90 at some point next week if we're lucky.
I mean, really, no complaints. It's nearly perfect. You were mentioning that sort of diffuse light. But the thing I am noticing, at least right now, most of the leaves are staying on the trees. We're not that far toward fall yet. Thank goodness, right? Well, stick around for the story with a look at the vote that is keeping Oregon's largest shelter open. And guess what? There is more money on the table here, how the county plans to spend the rest of its budget for homeless services. That's coming up.
Then at 7 o'clock on Straight Talk, my conversation with Portland City Commissioner Mingus Mapps. I asked him about his evolution on city charter reform, from one of its most outspoken critics to being the first to throw his hat in the ring to lead it as Portland's next mayor. That's next on Straight Talk.
Well, that race is already heating up. I'm back tonight at 11 with your headlines. If we don't see you then, have a wonderful weekend, everybody. The story is up next.
I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. Congratulations, we made it to Friday. I'm just back from attending a wedding out on the East Coast, and while I was there, a lot of people asked me about Portland. Is it really dangerous? Is crime totally out of control? Those led to some long discussions. But one of the things that seemed to really strike folks was when I explained how some of our stores have had to create special sections to protect products from shoplifting. It's the scourge of organized retail theft, and it's our top story tonight. Organized shoplifting is big business. Retailers in Oregon estimate they're losing nearly $500 million a year to it. Now, we've shown you the examples of crime time and time again here on The Story, but questions always linger. What is driving this trend, and what can be done to stop it? There's one part of this problem that we've not explored until tonight, a perspective from the thieves' point of view. Investigative reporter Kyle Leboshi went behind bars to get us answers.
Stores hit by organized retail crime
as they report brazen shoplifting.
And now some stores are changing the way they operate in order to try and curb the crime.
Retail theft has captured the headlines, and over the past year, we've gone deep to try and understand the issue. Watching crimes unfold and police chase the bad guys. We've talked to store owners, neighbors, loss prevention, and prosecutors. But the one voice we really haven't heard from, the criminals themselves. So to find out what it will take to slow this surge in shoplifting, we sent letters to some of the state's top offenders.
I got to the point where it was almost like a game to me. And I wasn't stopping for nothing.
Martin Castaway led a crime ring that police called the Castaway Crew, which hit big box stores throughout the Portland area.
Give me a ballpark figure, how much you think you made?
I mean, hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Castaway is now serving roughly 7 years in prison at the Snake River Correctional Institution for theft convictions across 3 different counties.
Does the presence of a security officer or loss prevention change your decision whether to go into a store or not?
Not really. If I see a security dude with a gun, I know he can't touch me.
What factors did you consider when determining what to steal?
The most amount I can get in the least amount of time. I mean, I would go into a store, steal $5,000–6,000 worth of merchandise, be out in 2 minutes.
Castaway and his crew often went in with a plan.
90% of the time, I knew exactly what I was going after.
Several heists targeted Dick's Sporting Goods. Castaway and crew parked close with the getaway driver standing by.
It's in and out. A lot of times the store people don't even know. They're like, by the time they turn around or even hear the alarms, I'm already out the door.
He went after brand name items like North Face jackets, which are often vulnerable, on display near the front doors.
Like, you want your best selling merchandise in the front because that's what people are going to see when they come in the store. That's perfect for me. Put it there. I'm gone with it faster that way.
Anti-theft devices like security ties that tether merchandise to the rack might slow him, but wouldn't stop him.
And if it had a cable on it, I don't care. I have a pair of cutters in my pocket that say this stuff's mine anyways.
Castaway stole armloads of jackets right off the rack, then bolted out the door with sensors flashing. Employees stood helpless. Most retailers tell their workers just avoid physical confrontation. Somebody might get hurt.
Don't get involved. Don't get hurt over it. It's not worth it.
Over the past year, some retailers in Portland have changed their checkout policy to prevent shoplifting. And they say it's working. Safeway has a separate section for items that are always getting ripped off, and Fred Meyer checks receipts before you leave.
Would that stop you?
No, not at all. What, some old lady saying, hey, sir. Well, by that time, I already got the stuff in my car. And while they're trying to pull up the phone, I'm out of the parking lot.
So what can be done in our community to help reduce shoplifting?
I would say more treatment programs.
Would tougher laws or penalties change this?
I don't think so at all. I think anybody who's engaged in this type of acts, I would say 70–80% of them are on drugs. They need treatment, not prison.
In Castaway's case, the retail theft helped fuel a meth and video poker addiction. He also stole to help pay for cars.
What happens after these items are stolen?
It could end up in another country. It could end up local bar. It could end up down this, anywhere. If I got stuff for construction workers, say 100 pairs of Carhartt pants, and I'm driving by a construction site, I could pull in there and talk to somebody.
Which brands were the easiest to resell or get rid of?
Well, summertime is Nike, anything from, I love selling stuff to women. They love to buy stuff. So Coach purses, perfumes, makeups from Ulta.
So you used a Coach purse as an example. I mean, that's an expensive purse. Where do you unload something like that?
Wherever I see women that look like they have money, it could be a strip club, it could be a hair salon, it could be a bar.
Which points to a solution that doesn't necessarily involve more security. Specifically, maybe people should stop buying stuff that's stolen online, in flea markets, or even on the street. If criminals know they can't sell the stuff they're stealing, then maybe they won't steal it in the first place.
Kyle joins me now, and okay, one thing I can hear people saying is, why are you showing the bad guys how to do this?
Yeah, good question. We're not really telling them something they don't already know. It's honestly no secret. Just look at the numbers. Last year, Portland police had more than 25,000 theft cases, so it's happening. They know how it works.
Yeah, it's happening a lot. And one of the places that you profiled was that Nike community store over in Northeast. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, interesting development even today. So as we've been reporting, that Nike community store in Northeast Portland has quietly been closed for the past year or so. Nike said nothing about its future until today. They said it's permanently closing that store. And you want a real world example of retail theft and its impact? There's an example for you. We witnessed it. People would go in there, steal armloads of shoes and apparel from Nike, walk out, no fear of being arrested. Security said, we can't stop them. Nike finally said, enough, we've got some real issues here, and shut it down. One important point here, Nike says it's still going to continue to invest in North and Northeast Portland. That's really important. They're looking at possibly relocating that store, but for community leaders, this is a blow. It really does hurt to lose Nike in Northeast Portland.
Yeah, it's outrageous. Okay, thank you, Kyle. Great stuff. By the way, what do you think about all this? Do you have a solution to stop or slow shoplifting? Send us your thoughts. The email is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Yes, it's been a while since we've touched on Oregon's Measure 114. That's the voter-approved gun safety measure that's been on hold since last November of last year. State and federal lawsuits have stopped it from going into effect. In federal court, a judge has found the measure constitutional, which means it passes muster in regards to the U.S. Constitution. But 114 still not implemented because of a state lawsuit in Harney County. Now, that suit argues that the measure violates part of the Oregon Constitution that deals with the right to bear arms. The trial's meant to answer the question, and it starts in 10 days on September 18th. But wait, there are some pretrial motions this week that will influence what can and cannot be admitted in court during the trial. So let's dive in and see what those are. Let's start with a motion from the plaintiffs. Those are the folks who want to overturn Measure 114. They asked the judge to ban testimony from a trauma surgeon who treats gunshot victims and family members who lost loved ones to a shooting. They also want to block the state from offering testimony about how deadly a large capacity magazine can be. On the other side, the defendants in this case, the state of Oregon, they want the law to kick in now. They asked the judge to look at the measure only as it's written. They don't want him to consider how it could be implemented if it's allowed to take effect. Basically, just look at the language and tell us if it's constitutional, nothing more. And this will likely be the last time that I say this when it comes to these Measure 114 lawsuits, but the judge actually ruled in favor of both sides. He will only consider whether 114 is constitutional as written, and he barred testimony from that laundry list of topics that the plaintiffs did not want discussed in court. According to the Oregonian, Judge Robert Ratio said the question is whether or not Measure 114 is facially constitutional under the Oregon Constitution. So all of that evidence is outside the scope of this court's purview, since I'm not making a policy decision. I'm just making a determination on the constitutionality of the ballot measure. Judge Ratio scheduled the trial to last 6 days, but since he limited some of the testimony, he now says it may not go that long. We'll be watching when all of this gets underway 10 days from now. Again, that's on Monday, September 18th. Now let's turn to our homeless crisis and a story we've been following closely for weeks, whether or not Multnomah County commissioners would help keep Bybee Lake's Hope Center afloat. Leaders of the state's largest homeless shelter said they were at risk of having to shut down without an injection of taxpayer money. And Multnomah County was sitting on tens of millions of dollars earmarked for homeless services. Seemed like it makes sense. But for weeks, it was unclear if commissioners would act to keep Bybee open. This week, they voted on how to use some money, and Bybee got some of what they originally asked for. Blair Best breaks down their spending plan, which now comes with an added twist.
The proposal before you today,
in a decision that's been months in the making, Multnomah County voted Thursday on how to spend millions of unspent dollars meant for homeless services. The money comes from several different sources, including over-collected supportive housing services tax dollars. The total amount of unspent funds was originally thought to be $65 million, but it ended up being $58 million. A county spokesperson tells us that's because the Joint Office of Homeless Services quickly found ways to spend more money. It's unclear what they spent that money on. So out of the unspent $58 million, about $40 million will go into next year's budget, and that leaves about $17 million left over. And that amount was the focus on Thursday. County commissioners voted to spend the money on expanding shelter and street cleaning services in Portland, supporting homeless service providers, and immediate rent assistance. Commissioner Sharon Myron was the only one who voted against this.
until we actually have accountability and aren't doing literally this, what feels like a giveaway, I will continue to vote no on spending these huge amounts of money that could move the dial.
Now, another funding decision that's had a lot of eyes on it lately is whether or not Multnomah County would give Bybee Lakes Hope Center, the state's largest homeless shelter here in North Portland, the money it needs to keep its doors open. They've been asking for $5 million. And on Thursday, Multnomah County commissioners agreed to grant them $1.5 million in emergency funding.
We're ecstatic. We're very happy that this happened.
Billy McClintock lives at Bybee Lakes,
I think it's wonderful.
which was at risk of closing this week if it didn't get immediate financial support.
It was a little frightening to get down to the very last day to get the yes. Now,
Alan Evans runs Helping Hands Recovery Reentry Outreach Centers, which oversees Bybee Lakes. Last month, they stopped accepting new homeless people due to the lack of money.
once we receive the first payment, then we'll start doing intakes again. And we're excited for that. We're ramping up for what that looks like. We've got about 90 people on the waiting list to get in our doors.
They're expecting their first check next week, but the $1.5 million will only get them through the end of the year. And it comes with a set of conditions, including hiring a third party to review their finances. It's the type of accountability Commissioner Myron wants to see more of.
It really boils down to the county having two problems. One, we don't have an overarching plan around homelessness. And two, we don't have accountability for the money that we're spending.
Now, just when you thought this whole thing couldn't get any more complicated, we have another layer for you. There's even more money the county has yet to spend, but this money is separate from everything we just told you about. A county spokesperson tells us they will soon be getting an additional, unexpected $50 million from Metro. This comes from supportive housing services tax money that Metro didn't anticipate, and the county will talk about how to spend that money sometime next week. Blair Best, KGW News.
Thank you, Blair. Still to come here on The Story. Safety is a big issue in downtown Portland, and a group of restaurants and hotels recently gathered to plead for help as their businesses are suffering. Now, there could be more clean and safe patrols at night and on the weekends, but some are skeptical if that will have the desired effect. We'll explain when The Story returns. We've talked about this a lot, but let's talk some more. Portland's effort to make downtown safer. Back in July, dozens of people representing hotels and restaurants gathered for a safety summit. The overarching conclusion they came up with: we need help making it safer around our businesses. And now there is a plan to increase clean and safe patrols in downtown's hospitality core.
To ask for voluntary compliance, to triage situations, provide medical care. We've Narcaned over 75 people in the last year. That's 75 lives that Clean and Safe have saved. So we're kind of serving as a triager, eyes and ears for the police.
The organization wants to add 14 to 15 public safety coordinators, as they call them, to have double staffing on nights and on weekends. So far, pledged funding would come from a combination of state, city, county, TriMet, and private sources, totaling up to millions of dollars. Portland police will still handle violent crime, and that has some people in downtown questioning if more clean and safe patrols will really do anything.
They know that they have to contact the police, and that those guys are there just to say, don't do that. And what do they care about those guys? So increasing their numbers to me makes no sense. They're not going to do anything different.
That's unfortunate. If all that funding comes through in the next few weeks, Clean and Safe says it should cover 6 months of increased patrols. And at the end of that time period, business leaders plan to meet again and then consider what worked, what didn't, where to go from there. And while safety is top of mind for many of the city's outward images to the rest of the country, it's prompted a new campaign from one of the world's biggest names in commercial advertising. Portland-based Wieden & Kennedy launched a new effort called Portland is What We Make It. Thursday, some of Portland's top creatives stood shoulder to shoulder to celebrate Portland's culture, beauty, and community in an effort to revive the Rose City's reputation of old.
It's a call to action to Portlanders. This is not about Wieden Kennedy. It's about everyone, all of us together. What are we going to make it?
Portland is what you make it, to me, means that. It's an invitation to be creative, to participate in the city, to get involved in the city. And if you're out there complaining, stop complaining. Get out there and do something.
All right, good message. The idea is simple. Think of something that expresses your love and pride for Portland. Maybe it's something you're already doing, like a neighborhood cleanup or just something small to make someone smile.
And all of those contributions add up to the city we want it to be. And it felt like it was time for Portland to feel like that again.
And there's nothing that's more important to us than the city of Portland. You know, when the city's thriving, we thrive.
Now, because Wieden & Kennedy is a business, they started a social media channel for all this. It's called @MakePortland, or you can use the hashtag #PortlandIsWhatWeMakeIt. And if you're extra inspired by all the good Portland has to offer, hey, let us know, will you? We'd love to showcase some of the positivity about our city here on the show since, okay, let's be honest, we can get a little focused on all the negativity. Email us, will you? The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. Our number is 503-226-5090. Still to come on the story. When it comes to landfills, did you know that your wasted food creates methane as it decomposes? Well, there's a company up in Longview that plans to turn that into a clean fuel and at the same time help big companies cut down on food waste. Cale Williams tells us how when the story returns. Tonight on Straight Talk, Laurel Porter is talking with Portland City Commissioner Mingus Mapps. He's the first person to declare that he's running for mayor of Portland next year. Under the new form of government, he says the city's policies have been failing.
For the first time in 40 years, I'll tell you, the number of people who are living in Portland has actually decreased. People are fleeing Portland. That combination of high crimes, high homelessness, and people literally fleeing the city is a sign of a city heading in the wrong direction.
Well, let me ask you, though, Commissioner, aren't you a part of those failed policies as a commissioner and part of a city council?
Well, I think I've done a good job in helping turn this around.
All right, you can watch the entire conversation in just a few minutes. It's right here on KGW at 7 o'clock. Finally tonight on The Story, food waste in the Pacific Northwest is a huge problem. Between Oregon and Washington, more than 3.5 million pounds of food gets wasted every year. And once that food ends up in the landfill, it creates the harmful greenhouse gas methane as it decomposes. But one company hopes to help ease that problem. Environmental reporter Cale Williams has our story.
This is just a great day. It's really awesome.
The decorative shovels were out.
Yes, there we go. Awesome.
And the spirits were high.
It's a huge win for Southwest Washington.
At a groundbreaking ceremony in Longview, Washington on Thursday for a new facility that will help cut down on food waste.
This facility will have a capacity to process 100,000 tons of wasted food per year.
Chris Thomas, Vice President of Public Affairs with Divert, the company behind the facility, said it won't be the kind of place that takes in food scraps that you might toss in your green bin. The Longview facility will be able to process 100,000 tons of food per year, so their customers operate on a bigger scale, places like grocery stores, hotels, and agricultural facilities.
That's where you're going to see more of a higher volume of wasted food at a tremendous scale, where it may not be suitable, it may not be best optimal for composting.
In a landfill, food waste produces methane, a potent greenhouse gas that contributes to climate change. At the Divert facility, that gas will be harnessed and turned into renewable energy.
We take that wasted food, we take it through a series of equipment that we have on site. It depackages the material, it removes all the plastics and contaminants.
The food is then turned into a liquid slurry before it goes into a tank for a process called anaerobic digestion.
What that does is it takes that material, and over the course of a couple weeks, it creates a biogas. We purify that biogas and clean out the contaminants. And once we do that, it's got the exact same specifications as the utility scale natural gas.
Thomas said there are lots of companies out there focusing on keeping food out of landfills, but
that should be the last step in the process. We should be focusing first on prevention.
To do that, the company collects lots of data on what kind of food is coming into their facilities and uses that to let their customers know how they keep that food from being wasted in the first place.
So we're using that insight to help inform them on what they could have, should have, would have done better, what they will do better next time.
The facility, the first of its kind in Washington, will also help its customers comply with a new law in the state, which requires organic material be diverted from landfills.
Another win if we can
Washington Representative Beth Dolio helped pass that law and was on hand for the groundbreaking.
Food waste! I'm so passionate about food waste!
And we're finally here.
But Thomas said that even in states that don't have these kinds of laws, their customers are still seeing benefits.
And they say, well, this wasn't that hard to choose this service. In some cases, it's cheaper than sending it out to a landfill anyway. And we're also making better decisions that make us run our business better.
Cale Williams, KGW News.
Super interesting. The Longview facility should begin taking in food waste from all over Oregon and Washington by the end of next year. Hey, that's the end of our show. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our collective story, well, that never ends. Straight Talk with Laurel Porter is coming up next. I'll see you right back here on Monday night at 6:30.